everyone, and welcome back to the 16 millimeter film crew. I'm Cindy.
And I'm Dale.
You can watch us on YouTube. You can like and comment on our YouTube videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can listen to us everywhere podcasts are found at 16 millimeter film crew podcast. And you can visit us on our website at www.16millimeterfilmcrew.com. This week we watched Sorry Baby, directed by Eva Victor. Something terrible has happened to Agnes, but life goes on for everyone else. When a friend visits on the brink of an important milestone, Agnes realizes how stuck she has been in this bittersweet story of finding your own way after your world comes crashing down. This movie stars Eva Victor, who also wrote the script for this movie. It also stars Naomi Ackie, Lucas Hedges, and John Carroll Lynch. So, tell us your thoughts about this one.
Um, this is a project with the basis of the whole, I guess, rooted in like the Me Too movement, and women's agency and stuff like that, where like really bright, talented young women gets assaulted by a professor or an advisor in a college area that she kind of had an interest in, and it got really misconstrued, and he kind of forced stuff on her, and it's basically like it's her story of overcoming, and dealing with that. She couldn't get the justice she wanted, or seek, like, or didn't want to seek, because she didn't want to ruin his life. So she contented with having her life ruined to be nice to him, and it's about her growth, and like not even growth, it's her coming to terms. I guess there's no real way you can accept that ever, like something as horrific happening to you, but it's basically a story of how she's digging herself out of that hole, which I thought was really, really wholesome. You don't really get to see pictures of people wrestling with that and everything that comes with it very much. It's usually like when movies or shows have this topic, it usually goes straight to like, oh, I'm stuck being a victim because nothing happened, or I get my recompense. First the person, you don't really get to see that internal struggle and fight to regain your own agency, which is it's an amazing side to show in this picture.
Yeah, this was it was sad for me watching it, but also like kind of hopeful. I've been seeing this trailer like a lot. Anytime I watched any like A24 or any movie that wasn't like a superhero film in the
Mm,
movie theaters. So I wasn't sure what it was about, but like figuring out what it was about when I was watching it was kind of hard just because like it really isn't. I think when you sometimes movies sensationalize things like this, but I think in certain instances, there have been movies that have been made about these topics where it isn't sensationalized at all, and it's been pretty kind of straightforward in terms of how they depict sexual assault. And I think like The Assistant was like a good, I guess, example of like talking about something that's really terrible, but not like showing a whole bunch of stuff, like not showing the abuse or things like that. Like to me, this movie is like more straightforward than those films that came out like post Me Too era, like Bombshell or The Assistant or whatever, or even like Promising Young Woman. I feel like those movies were like sort of some of them were like pretty on the nose and some of them weren't. But they were like overtly like feminist movies, or I think that's what they were trying to go for. Um, some of them succeeded, some of them were like, not too sure about that one. But I think for this film, it because this is like semi-autobiographical, it didn't feel like it was like raising a flag for like girl boss feminism or whatever that means. It just felt like a personal story that just happened to be about this particular topic
mm.
because that's what happened to the director of the film. So I think I appreciated it a lot more just because I was just like, yeah, it's like if it doesn't feel like preachy or whatever. Um, and not that there's anything necessarily like wrong with that stuff. It's just that like I think this movie came out a lot more authentic to me,
Hmm.
just in terms of how it was done. Like nothing was sensationalized or like the Hollywood sheen was not on any of it. It was very like it was shot in like Massachusetts. It honestly felt like something in the same world of like Manchester by the Sea. Like it was like that same like really drab, like you never see the sun. Like the environment feels really cold, but the people are warm. Like the
Yeah.
friendship that this movie is based on, like or this movie is like centered in, which is between Agnes and what's her name again? It's something crazy. Naomi Aki's
Liddy.
character, Lydia, yeah. It's like it's almost Lydia, but it's not.
Mm.
Yeah. So, their friendship is such a central part of the movie and like how that is healing and how like I don't know. I I also think the writing was so good just in terms of like how there can be moments of levity or like certain situations are so absurd that like you can't help but kind of laugh at them. And the way that the character is approaching something so serious that happens and something so traumatic that happens to her is such an interesting way of like dealing with that I wouldn't have expected, which I
Mm.
thought was a really cool, like different perspective of like seeing this kind of story. It wasn't all like doom and gloom. And I think that that is important because that's like also not how life is either. So I just felt like that was pretty authentic is the word that I'm going to keep
Yeah.
repeating, coming back to because that's how it felt.
Yeah, it's like you hit the authenticity, whereas the setting and everything. It felt like, there was a period I remember like in the mid 20 teens to 2020-ish, where everybody wanted to be naturalistic in their filming, like we're doing no all natural lighting, everything like that. It reminded me very much of that, and like you mentioned before, the setting being very cold, but the people are wearing like very bright colors, and the people themselves are also very warm. Is a dichotomy. Like she herself is in a cold, like she's in a coldness, like metaphorically as a person, and everybody around her is brightness. Like you mentioned, her relationship with Leedy, and like she gets a cat. Like you could see like the thawing as she's interacting and she's getting out of her comfort zone. Like she meets that guy who she's first standoffish with, and then she develops a relationship for. But still, in her day-to-day interactions, like even when she goes to the grocery store, like when she gets the cat, you see her panic because she thinks that's the former professor once again. And so she's still, as she's still trying to come out of these experiences, there's always these jolts of coming back, and especially I think that also comes to a head where like when she finally gets the job that he vacated, after three years, the paper she wrote that she published, like in that led to the assaults, that paper, that she published and the school loved, everybody loved, they want her to make a curriculum for a class around that. And it's very apropos that that experience has what did her, because the first book they do is discuss Lolita, and then I think it's a very warm, bright spot in the film where she has a bunch of male students talking about their discomfort to the sexual abuse the character in Lolita displayed. So that gives, I guess, that also adds to it her original wish of she just wanted that person to not that be that kind of person anymore. You have a new crop of students that she's teaching based off her experience who are already not vibing with the abuse depicted in the book she showcased to the class.
Yeah, I thought that that was really like interesting. I think that again, I feel like women writing men are just like is just like I don't know, slightly better. Like I just think that they bring out like a humanity and like a softness that oftentimes gets overlooked
Mhm.
or not explored enough. So not only the kids in, or they're not really kids, they're in grad school. So
Yes,
like not
grass.
only
Yeah.
the adults the male adults who she's teaching, but also Lucas Hedges who plays Gavin, who is like, I guess that's their boyfriend. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're labeling it, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, the fact that he is so like kind and like open and like not afraid to talk about his feelings or be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Like you, I don't know, even still, I feel like now we're in like a good shift where like because we were talking about earlier, I mean not earlier, but in the more recent weeks, Superman, stuff like that, like you're getting more representations of men just being like kind, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of like a very recent development. It's not always been like that. Even since we started this podcast, that's not even how men
Hmm.
had always been depicted. So the fact that we're getting more of those characters or more of these male characters who are just like kind and open and like wanna be like supportive and there for the women in their lives. Like that is really hopefully what I hope that that does is that we get this sea change where it's like men don't feel like they need to be a certain kind of way in order to like be in society. And
Hmm.
it isn't like a split where it's like men have been so terrible, so they have to go over there and they're not included in anything anymore. But like we're slowly starting to develop something that's much more equal, where it's like, no, no, men need to be a part of the conversation and they need to be involved. We just have to change the way that we think about the certain things. Like, let's just get to a healthier place. And even the character, sorry, even oh God, I can't remember anyone's name. It's so bad. Why can't
The restaurateur, when
no
he's talking. Oh,
no
okay.
Agnes, sorry.
Agnes. Oh, sorry.
But him too, you know what I'm saying? Like also just like kind open, let me get you a sandwich, let me help you come down from this panic attack. Like wonderful. I thought
Mm.
that was such a good it's just a small scene, but like I loved that. But I like that Agnes, even in like her suffering of like having been assaulted, chooses not to like, even when she says, I don't want him dead, I don't want to ruin his life. Like he has a kid, like I just want him to be better. Like
Hmm.
even in like changing the way that we speak about certain things, even honestly, it would be completely understandable if that's how she felt. But the
Yeah.
fact that that's not her feelings, I think, is directing us to a healthier place. Like you still have, it's still wrong, absolutely. And she still had, honestly, she felt entitled to burn his office down. See, I'm like Liddy. I'm like, you want to do it? Sure, I'll be with you. You know, I'll be the lookout.
I'll burn it
But
down
like,
for you, you know? Yeah.
yeah, like the fact that she doesn't want to do that, I think it's good. I
Hmm.
think it's good. I think where this movie shines is that it's showing like an alternative to like I think how certain things have been depicted in Hollywood in the last like couple couple of years, last couple decades. Like it's bringing us to a different place. And I think that's probably how most people, I guess, end up. Like most people aren't going to, do something crazy like, I don't know, try to
Hmm.
find the person and like slash their tires or like break into their house or whatever. Like most people don't do stuff like that even when they have been like the victim of a certain crime of assault or whatever. Like actually a lot of these things still go unreported.
Yeah.
So I think that her mindset was good and I think that the way that men are depicted in this film in particular is really
Hmm.
good. Except for
Yeah.
that one guy.
And I think especially with this case, it seemed her reasoning and also she's taking not just taking consideration like who he is and she has a kid. I think she also in her rationale of it is also probably saying it's like mixed signals or mixed, you get what I'm saying? Like necessarily unintentional. Then that's probably maybe why she doesn't also go all out as what she wants. But I loved like you mentioned before with we're a new era of like men being very dynamic with their emotions and stuff like that. And I thought that was very well, I think we've always had that to a degree. Like I look at like Spielberg when he writes directs, his male characters are multifaceted to a degree. You see that with Fableman's his character, like they tend to be multifaceted in a way. And you have a lot of older guard writers, I think like Tarantino and stuff like that, where men don't really have emotions. I do think we're coming to an age where you have a lot of writers and directors who are our age who are, um, coming to recognize the experiences they've had, and they're more thoughtful and aware, both as women and men, with how they're writing these characters with nuance. Like we never really had that before. Like male characters are always this way, women, female characters are always this way. So it's good to see the dynamic of everybody getting even playing field to be multifaceted and dynamic in this current era of Hollywood and writing that we're in right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really positive thing, especially now because most of our society, our culture is much more conservative,
Mm,
much more right-leaning right now. So I think that the art that's coming out right now is actually good and hopefully getting us, away from some of those values
mm,
because I don't think those are good. But I think that kind of shifting things in a way that just feels more honest. Because even like even before, I guess, where things maybe seemed more liberal, even though I don't know if they technically were, it was giving more of like this moral high ground of like, well, this is what you should be doing. And if you're not doing this, and there's something wrong with you.
yeah.
Where I think that now it's more of just like, hey, life is complicated, people are complicated. Like, let's just figure it out together, guys, and let's just try to be nice. Like, and I will think that that is actually a more receptive message than trying to like, I don't know, shame people or guilt people into like feeling a certain type of way. So I think that was cool. In terms of like the story itself and like how things unfolded with her and the teacher, I thought that was interesting because the conversation that Agnes and Liddy have, where Liddy's like, "Oh, you guys could have like a thing," and Agnes is like, "Well, I wouldn't actually want that because then it would feel like an undervalue of like my
Yeah.
intelligence and like what I'm bringing to the table. Like, is he into me purely because of that, or does he actually think I'm like smart and I like my ideas are like good?
Mm,
And so as soon as she walked into his house, I said, "Oh Lord, here we
yeah.
go."
Yeah.
It's like you already know it. And the fact that she describes it as like, I was like very aware that what we were doing and I didn't like it. And the fact that I kept kissing him just so he wouldn't do something else is, I
Mm,
think, unfortunately, something that was very relatable. Like, it's hard because it's like, how do you navigate some of these situations, right? Now, they're all adults. It's not like there's a
it's a grad
power,
school. Yeah.
it's a power dynamic because
Yeah.
he is her professor, right? But like in terms of the other elements where it's like teacher, student, it's not
Mm,
like a crime in terms of like them getting together because like of an age
mm,
difference. It's just it would be inappropriate, right?
mm,
If both of them were into it. But because
yeah.
she's not really into it, like she thinks that he's a great writer and she's like inspired by him, like and he definitely takes advantage of that. And the fact that he did that with another student too, which comes in later, it just
Mm,
shows that like, oh, what a bad man. But I feel like the complications of like trying to get out of a situation like that, which she does describe later, is unfortunately like a very relatable thing for a lot,
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of women who are listening to that who have been in those type of situations. And that whole process of like her getting checked up by the doctor, having the conversation with the university staff, like the fact that it's so that those were the moments that stuck out the most to me
Mm,
because it was very much like, okay, you can do everything right, you know,
yeah.
and still be treated that way. Like
Yeah.
just not really be considered. No one really seems like they care. They're not even looking out for you. They're looking out for their own interest. It's just very cold and detached and like terrible. Like
Yeah.
it's just a terrible way to treat other people who have just gone through something like that. It's
Like
very sad.
the doctor in particular had like no like regard for the situation. Like he's speaking like very matter of factly. And then, like I think in every situation, no matter what situation, if you're going to like everybody needs an advocate. And luckily Agnes had
Yes.
Liddy there to be your advocate. And she's there talking for her. And then he goes, ma'am, calm down. So it kind of hits a doubleness of a male doctor disregarding what a woman has been through. And then it also comes to the fact that he's telling a black woman to calm down, and it's a very matter where she's calm, but because your bedside manner is so poor, they have now resorted to sarcasm to communicate with you because you're disregarding everything they're saying. And then to Vietnam, like, and they're both behaving in that manner. They're both being combative because of the way he's talking to them. But he distinctly, like the camera shows him distinctly looking at her, at Lily, at Naomi Aki's character, and saying, "Calm down," when they're both acting in that manner. That was really like that's a thing that happens. I've seen it very much with going to the doctor and seeing a white person. Like you have two people very much acting the same way, but I've seen the targeted aggression being toward the person of color. You know,
Mm.
so and then you like you mentioned before with Natasha. Like Natasha, how is Natasha in their friend group? Like I don't. That's not a person you want as a friend. Like, and this
Mm.
is even before like they're everybody else, of course, friends move from college, but they're the only two still there because they work for the university, and they're with their friends, and she's just like cutting into all of them. And then whenever somebody is talking about what they've achieved, she jumps in like she's like a friend who does not want your success. Like your success undermines her, and she hates you for it. And like every time that somebody says, "Oh, we're like," they talked about moving in and buying a house, she says something that happened to her. Then, lady says something about going to New York, and she's like, "Well, some of us stayed here, like me and Agnes, to bring Agnes down along with her when that was not the reason." And then she goes to go on to say, "Oh, nothing's really much happening with Agnes because she's not talking," and that's when you see Agnes break away, and Lydia's like, "I have to advocate for my friend now." Like, "Hey, you're not perfect. You got these bones in my fish." Like, what's wrong? And you see her shut down, and then at the end, where she's stalking her once she gets a job, and then you see her relationship with the professor is different. Like in the few scenes we see with them as a group talking with him, he's more interested in Agnes on either at academia level and at natural attractness, and Natasha cannot stand it at all. Like she kind of has to force herself in when like, oh, here's my paper too. Talk about me as well. I need your attention. She even when she's being rude to her at the end, she's like, "Oh, you're beautiful. You get everything you want." She's like, "No, I don't." And then she goes, "Well, at least you didn't have sex with him because I did." And the way she describes it, she basically just had sex with the professor just so she could get attention from him and maybe steal some of the limelight off of Agnes. Like, how do these people sit and have a friendship with a person like that? I did not understand that from like I questioned that even without them talking at the end when she gets the professor, just that one dining room scene. Like, how is this your friend? Like, that pissed me off so much.
Yeah, I think we've all had someone in our lives who has been like so insecure that like they can't help but like lash out because they're like miserable in their own lives. I experienced that like in high school and college. I think that by the time you're in grad school and like fully like getting married, having kids, I don't understand the why we're still going to her home.
Yeah.
So even though I'm gonna say, okay, yeah, Natasha's crazy, I will also have to look at them kind of sideways because it's like y'all are still in community with this woman.
Yeah.
So, not
After
really sure about
college. Well,
that.
you have no
Yeah,
reason to. Like you're
you don't have
meeting
a
up
reason
as a
to.
friend group and you're still letting her
You have no reason to.
all these
So I'm looking at y'all kind of sideways too, because like that doesn't make any sense. Um, but I also think that Agnes is like kind of strange. Like she is like the way she interacts with people is kind of like a little off kilter. Like even the way she like interacts with Liddy's wife.
hmm.
If I was the wife, I'd be like, I don't want to come to your house. Like you're kind of rude. Low key, like and I think it's more of just like, well, Liddy's like my best friend and we're so close and you're just another person who's in our lives or whatever. And honestly, it is kind of uncomfortable trying to adjust to like a new person joining your like group. But like, dang, that's her wife. Like, can we not even pretend to be like a little more hospitable,
I,
a little
I
more?
mean, I think it's the assumption. Like, I think when we have like usually 9 to 10, we're kind of alike with our friends to a large degree. We see more of our
Mm,
similarities and our differences. So you assume once your friend gets married to a person that you don't really know, that they're just like you and your friend. And
yeah, and
nine
then
times out of 10, your
they're
friend
not.
is not marrying the person like them because then they'd just be friends. There's not somebody you can attain a relationship. And so she's of the assumption, oh, you're married to her. That means you should have the same quirks and schisms like me, and you could tell when they first interact that uh Letty's wife is very straight and narrow, whereas
Hmm.
Letty's kind of off kilter, and makes the assumption of what of being flippant about not really first getting to know the person the way she should.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Yeah, and that's real. Like that's a very real thing. Like they're not with you because you're their friend. Like they're not going to be with someone just like you. Even though the Fran, who is Liddy's life, looks very similar to Agnes, I don't think that was a coincidence. But in terms of their character, they're very different characters.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really what I enjoyed the most is that like this is a story of a person who gets terribly assaulted and has to like rebuild her life. She's constantly like afraid that someone's like creaking around her house. Like she's just like she's dealing with all of that stuff, but she's still like living her life. Like
Mm,
she's finding a way out of it.
yeah.
Like she gets the great job, she's in a good relationship. Like that incident didn't end up defining like who she was as a
Yeah.
person, and I think that that's really powerful. Just the fact that like she didn't like cease to exist. Like her life didn't cease to exist once that happened. Like she was able to continue going.
Yeah.
And the conversation she has with their baby is like really sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that. That she was like, you know what, I can't see being a mom. And then Lucas is
Mm,
like, you know what, you can change. Things change. And I was like, yeah, that's so real.
yeah.
And I was just like, it was, I don't know, it was just so cute. She was just talking to the little
She's like,
chubby
I'm
baby.
not, no, I can't be a mom, but I'll be the best aunt, or godparent I can be. Like, I will be, sometimes I will fuck people up for you.
Yeah.
That kind of person. Everybody needs that person in their life where they can feel that. Like, and I love this story because it's like I said, it's her coming out of a hole. It's like, and it's not just, the when people go through these experiences, you know, you got to deal with the anxiety and depression of it. Like, even Liddy, when she first comes back, she's like, "Are you getting out the house?"
Hmm.
That kind of thing. Like when you're in that mindset, just like functioning. I know when I like get my bouts of depression, I'm just lying in bed, like not doing anything, like not eating, not doing anything. And the immense amount of mental fortitude it just takes to just get out of bed and
Mm.
then to force yourself to like interact with like society. Like I have to like I was like, dang, I've been in bed like how many days, and I'll have to force myself to like, okay, cool. I have to do something. Like I have to find something to do. Like whether it's in like cleaning my room or whatever. Like people really don't understand when you're dealing with depression, anxiety, the amount of like strength or mental fortitude it takes. Like even her having a panic attack in the car. Like there are times where I've driven in the car with my mom and I've hit a panic attack randomly, and I'm sitting in the parking lot hyperventilating, not
Mm.
knowing why. There's times I woke up in the morning and I'm like I have anxiety for no reason.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
so I
Same.
love the fact of her like this movie is her like constantly fighting her way out of that hole, which is something that even though, like I said before, we're in a new era of Hollywood where writers and directors are more in touch with their feelings, that is still something that doesn't really get shown very often. Like we still see people with depression and anxiety, but the transition of coming out of that hole is never really showcased in its entirety. It's like
Hmm.
I'm depressed and I went to psychiatrist once and I'm better now. It's never that full, work that people usually do. So
Yeah. And the thing is when the movie ends, it's not like all wrapped up and she is better.
no,
Like she's still in process.
yeah.
So I think that that's pretty, yeah, it was just a really good film. Like I
Mm,
really, I don't know if I enjoyed it because
mm.
the subject matter is
It's
kind of
something
dark,
that, yeah.
but I think that I related to it and I felt seen by it and I
Mm,
felt like this is like a really great story and I'm just glad that it exists. I'm glad that
mm,
it's like out there for people to watch.
yeah,
I think that it'll probably help people. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So on to the news. Not really real big box office stuff, other than, of course, Fantastic Four dropping to number three in its third week in the top 10. But with this era of Hollywood, of course, we've had the success of Superman and some of this product placements in this picture. Of course, we saw Jurassic World Rebirth, with, of course, featuring very Jeeps constantly, numerous Dr. Pepper Frito-Lay products, even, you know, you could. bags featured at 7-Eleven. Of course, you had most likely the F1 movie, where they even brands pay to be in the movie. Of course, Tommy Hilfiger, Mercedes, Expensify, other one, a plastic cross racing suits and everything. So Hollywood is now in the era of, sponsored blockbusters, and this comes as a hit as everybody, doesn't really like the idea of ads. Like if I'm paying for a streaming platform, I don't want to see ads, so you have issues with YouTube and ISPs and browsers, because we have, ad blockers and stuff like that, and the constant fight on YouTube and slash Google are with to block those or circumvent people using those items. So now, Hollywood itself has taken a different approach with these deals, uh, for just background placements like 50K to where, prime positioning, like, of course, logo on the jacket, big bold, or car chases like we've seen in Barbie featuring was it the new Chevy SUV, turn like halfway through the Barbie is a product, but it turned into a car ad halfway through. So Hollywood is now pivoted because we don't want to watch ads, as we're watching TV or watching something on streaming. They said, all right, cool, we'll just feature the ads in these projects. um so looking ahead, like especially due to F1 being the massive cinematic success it was, a summer blockbuster, and the money it hauled in with this. So now executives are thinking they could most likely chase particular paydays and windfalls by creating multi-year deals with brands to be featured in numerous movies and projects. Even like Dick's Sporting Goods now has its own production studio to make sports documentaries, which ties with a whole bunch of other brands. Um, so it's a new era for Hollywood. They're trying to get that ad revenue. Anyway, if you're not gonna sit there and watch an ad for 15 seconds and you're just gonna skip it, we'll just put it in the movie and still recoup the money anyway. I'd rather that the product and ad be in the project than actually having to sit through a 15-minute thing or a commercial. I'd rather like, all right, cool, you're paying for the product in there, that's on me, than having to sit through an ad to watch. So
There we go. Um, in other news, the Writers Guild just kicked out two acclaimed showrunners. So writer Park Chan-wook, who did Old Boy, who directed Old Boy, um, and Don McKellar were expelled from the union for writing on HBO's Sympathizer during the 2023 strike, basically the harshest penalty available that bars them from working with Disney, Netflix, HBO, and other major studios. They also suspended member Anthony Caprinio. Caprin Caprinio. Okay. Until 2026. This follows the Guild's discipline of seven other writers earlier this year, with the WGA now making all punishments public as the industry heads towards the 2026 contract negotiations. While Park and McKellar can still work internationally, their high-profile expulsion is the WGA's way of saying the gloves are off for the next labor showdown. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's crazy. But like I also did just assume that people were still doing work
yeah.
during these strikes. It is interesting that they got called out for it and then expelled from the WGA for it,
Mm.
and now are barred from working with these like major streamers. So I wonder how that's gonna affect, because I mean like that's what most Hollywood directors, screenwriters, that's how they're doing their business is with these big streamers like HBO and Netflix and stuff. So like that's kind of crazy. I mean, Park Chan-wook was already like fine, like he was doing the work intern his I think is he I want to say is he either Korean or Japanese? I'm trying to
Old
remember.
Boy, I think did the original. I don't think he did the original, but I think he did the remake. Not sure, but if he is South Korean, so he's
Yes,
fine.
he's Korean.
So
So
yeah.
that's where his base is. That's where he started his work from. But yeah, like everyone's doing work with these big streamers. So it'll be I don't know if that means that you could still direct a movie that will be distributed by Netflix or HBO, but you just can't write on it. I'm not really sure how. those rules work, but that is a pretty harsh punishment. But I also feel like it's justified because like everyone was trying to make sacrifices during these strikes to get a better deal for the people who really needed it. So, um,
I mean,
mm,
like you said, he'll be fine because, like I said,
yeah,
he did the original Old Boy. He wrote, directed. His wheelhouse is mostly South Korea, you know. So, he's one of the few who won't really be affected by it because his main film market is not the English language; it's Korea. Him being a part of the union just gives him access to the American market, which he'll probably still get because these projects that are airing in Korea are already moving to streaming platforms anyway, so he'll be fine, Um, but I do think it's like they were a lot of projects going on. We mentioned it during the strike, the amount of projects that were still shooting, the amount of projects that happened out of it. Ryan Reynolds, took a writing credit for Deadpool and Wolverine to circumvent, the WGA strikes, continue shooting what the Game of Thrones House of Dragons was shooting in Europe to well, European, I guess it's kind of US European project in a way, but
yeah, it's complicated.
they circumvented a lot of projects, decided not to move from the US like Canada and Mexico and stuff like that to avoid those kind of things. So I think them being blocked from also working with these major streamers and major studios is a sign that how serious and how aware the industry is of the guild. Like, all right, we'll make a deal with the guild, and them being kicked out of the guild limits their access to these bigger studios. So, I guess that's a signal for everybody else to don't be a scab, which is necessary. I don't know why he decided to continue writing on it anyway. So
Hmm.
yeah. Um, I want to talk about streamers. So a lot of stuff is happening with streamers, entering, the terrestrial space that used to be dominated by the big four terrestrial broadcasters, your CBS, your ABC, stuff like that, your NBC. And they are also entering the streaming world. Um, but Netflix is now got the rights to in Canada, both US and Canada, for the 2027 and the 2030 Women's World Cups. Of course, the Men's World Cup is globally the biggest draw, but if you're North American, for the most part, the women's team is much better than the men. So that's a big pool of viewers who are into international soccer who will be watching both in the US and Canada. And in that investment, they also have other marquee tournaments. But this is a thing we've seen like recently. We've seen WWE and ESPN. They're usually broadcast on Peacock with their big events like WrestleMania, SummerSlam. They're moving from Peacock and NBC to ESPN to show their big pay-per-views while also still airing on Netflix internationally, and Monday Night Raw is featured on Netflix. So you're seeing a lot of these terrestrial streamers trying to break into that sports market. Of course, we've seen it with Netflix, not Netflix, we've seen it with Amazon doing NFL games, and Amazon once again with NASCAR. So now the streaming platforms are competing for those cable TV spots for premier sporting events. So it's going to be a very interesting couple of years where if you want to watch it's already an issue now when I go to Super Bowl parties. I help my dad with our church. It's a bunch of old men who just want to watch Super Bowl, and I think they could put it on CBS and like watch Super Bowl. Like, no,
Mm.
you gotta have what was it, a Plymouth Plus subscription to watch it. So it's I don't know how it's going to work. Apparently, these sporting groups are paying a lot of money for the rights, but I'm also wondering how it affects the viewing of it. Might not really, because once they're on streamers, anybody can pirate it online and watch for free. So I'm curious to how long this trend will continue. So
Yeah,
yeah,
everything's moving to streaming.
yeah.
Um, okay, in other news, the Office offshoot show, say that 10 times fast, The Paper trailer has debuted, which depicts a struggling newspaper company. Um, and it stars Domhnall Gleeson. which you may know from like Star Wars and the like. But it's the mockumentary comedy series in the same vein as The Office or Abbott Elementary or something like that. And it'll debut with 4 episodes on September 4th. I'm assuming it got a full season order. So I guess the other four will be released at some point, or if there's more than that, we'll see. Um, and they have one cast member coming back, Oscar Nunez, who played Oscar on the original series, the American series of The Office. I am cautious about this because I don't know. It seems like not just recently, but like in the last couple of years, like there's been this push to kind of capitalize on nostalgia of like older shows that were really popular and to bring them back in some different kind of format, but like basically it's the same thing. It's just swapped out with different characters. Um, Maybe it's okay. I think Greg Daniels is still involved in this one, so like maybe it could be good. But seeing as that like the Sex and the City reboot and just like that got canceled after 3 seasons because everyone and people were like hate watching it for like the last 2 seasons. So like I don't know if it's a great idea to like continue to like try to regenerate the magic of these shows. I don't know. I don't think it's a great idea, but they've already done it. So I'll maybe watch the first episode and see how it goes down, but like I'm not really sure. I feel like you can't really replicate certain things. And I feel like one of the reasons that The Office was so good was that because they weren't trying to be like politically correct or like Michael Scott is a very complicated character. Like he has his optimism, but he's also like offensive and also and just like kind of selfish and just like a mess. So unless and I think when you do like the reboot stuff, whether it's this show or Gossip Girl, like they tried to do the reboot of that. Like they try to make things like better and like more sanitized and more like politically correct because we're in a different era now and people are gonna call out stuff like that. But I feel like the reason why those shows worked was because they weren't thinking about those things, which made it like funny and like yeah, you can say, "Ooh, that's not good and in good taste," but the characters like point to the fact that it wasn't the right thing to say or the right thing to do or that it was offensive. Like there, so it's just like I don't know. I didn't watch the Sex and the City reboot, so I have no idea what happened on that. But I don't know if trying to capitalize on nostalgia when it comes to shows works as well as maybe it does with films. I feel like with movies, you can sort of kind of get away with it.
Mm,
But in the TV shows, because it's more episodes, you're spending a lot more time with the characters. Like you feel maybe closer to their stories. Maybe it feels like maybe more personal. And I just don't know if like trying to redo it is it like I don't know. I don't think it lands the same way.
yeah. So on to that, like that topic is very apropos. When it comes to talk about what we watched, I myself did marathon the latest season 14 of King of the Hill. There is very much a lot of nostalgia in it. Um, but it seems very um anachronistic in a way, still antiquated in a way, especially in the perception of like a lot of the characters still stay the same, but there's still that tinge of growth in them. Peggy and Hank for a lot of they still remain the same for the most part. I think the character Bobby's character, like Bobby, that boy like actually matured in like adult guys on restaurant. So there are a lot of things I do love about the reboot, the King of the Hill reboot. There are some things that it does wonderfully well. There are some things where I think it tries to stay too much onto what we watched like almost 8 years ago, I think. Which is hard when you're trying to bring back a rebooted IP. You have to maintain that delicate balance of adding something new, but also still trying to give people the same emotion. Um, And that's like what you said earlier with people bringing back IPs and then it not working. I think that's the overall factor. And I think a lot of these industries tend to just, hey, we're going to repeat what we did before and hope it works. I think if you want to make a good revival or reboot, you kind of have to mix up a bit and add new things to it. And King of the Hill also, even as much as I don't like, I have issue with some of it. It does it really well. Um, and like there have been other reboots that would try to make or jokes or commentary in modern society, and the jokes feel like really dated, like cringy Reddit humor, you
Mm.
know. But at least the jokes on here feel very contemporary and up to date. Is like they are very aware of the times. It wasn't like written like, "Hey, this we've written this like 6 years ago and we're putting it out now." Like they're still the jokes they're making are still somewhat relevant, to it. So.
Yeah, I've also been rewatching Friends.
Mm.
And like just 'cause I don't know, the world, everything just feels like it's falling apart. So there's something nice about like just going back to something where you already know how it's gonna end.
Hmm.
The stakes are super low, like nothing really happens. Um, every time I go back and rewatch it, like you just see the flaws of the show so much more vividly. But I also think that there is like a charm to it, which was like nice.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been something to distract me for a while. And I also watched this really good video essay by a creator called Broe Deschanel.
Mhm.
She does like film criticisms and stuff. And she did this one called Why It's Almost Impossible for Hollywood to Make an Anti-War film. And it's like an hour plus. So like, that's basically a movie. But it was really interesting because she was like going through all of the war films that have been coming out, and she was saying that like some of those war films are like some of the best movies ever made. But are they anti-war, right? And she was getting into like all the research and stuff, and she was talking about Warfare, the movie that we had watched earlier this year, and I think we both really liked and felt like it was a really honest depiction of a situation like that.
Mhm.
And she was saying that like there was a lot of criticism against it because it was maybe like some people were saying that it was a glorification of like war. And I think her stance was just like, it's not, but it's also not anti-war because it's centering, the soldier, the American soldiers, the soldiers who fought, in the Iraq War, not centering Iraqis, like innocent people who were, killed and their lives absolutely destroyed because of American interference.
Mhm.
And I think that's what she was saying is that like the newest version of All Quiet on the Western Front is like one of the closest films that is more anti-war because it's not like no, the soldier doesn't get to go home, things don't just get to work out. Spoiler, he dies, and like there's no like, and it is like overtly political.
Yeah.
Like they're saying something about this situation, like directly in how the government and the military industrial complex is very bad. So when I watched Warfare, I felt like it was saying that like war is bad. Like that is what I took from it. And I definitely, and I still feel that way. I feel like that's the message that they were trying to put across. I wasn't aware that like Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, who made the film, were saying that it was apolitical. I wasn't aware of that conversation because to me, it's like if you're making a war film, it's political, like just by the nature of you making that kind of movie.
Mhm.
Um, like you have something to say about war, which is what the government is doing, right? So like, um, I wasn't aware of that conversation. Putting that in the context of watching it, I yeah, I feel like it is still saying war is bad, but I feel like it's not going a step further in saying why it's bad. Like because there are these governments who are making decisions about, taking young guys, putting them in this situation, whether they're volunteering, because there's certain movies that it's like, Vietnam, they were conscripted to like be in these wars, but for the people who are volunteering to be in these wars because they think it's going to bring them community or whatever, like that's still bad. Like that's still the government kind of putting, or not putting, but like putting an idea out there of like what is like worth
Work.
doing with your
Yeah.
life, you know?
Yeah.
So, she did talk about some other films that were like explicitly anti-war. And I thought that I can't remember the last one, but the one she called one was it called Come and See. These are foreign language movies, and I think that that's what she was also saying was that like you can't get like an anti-war film from Hollywood. Like it's just not gonna
Not gonna work. Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
So it was so interesting. And with everything going on now, I was like, wow, that's really I never really even thought about it in terms of those in those terms, but like thinking about it now, I'm like, yeah, that's it's pretty
Yeah.
authentic. It's pretty true. Yeah, and I really liked it. It was really good. It's like a really good video essay, so check it out.
Yeah, it's kind of like I saw to watch, I think online, not online, but this Good Night Good Luck, George Clooney's movie that he directed, that's about,
Mm.
which is very apropos, and I guess that's also why a couple last month CNN broadcast one of the live shows from
Yeah.
Broadway, because it is like a lot of the war, like this is like a lot of the media we're seeing now, is very much, it reminds me very much of growing up post 9/11, where it was pro rah rah rah, America is great, like, and but there's zero nuance into talking about it. Like in Good Night Good Luck is like, all right, cool, do you have senators who are kind of being corrupt, who are trying to, they're committing atrocities, and they decide to report on it, which is kind of the opposite of what's happening right now. Like reporters and journalists are not doing due diligence by keeping the powers that be in check, which is why they tend to get away with it. So yeah, it's like it's very timely. Like I feel like I'm living in, once again, like I'm in middle school, high school, and I'm watching like 9/11 all over again with this taste and style of media, and I think it's very purposeful as well, with some of the movies that are coming out. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like even when I was like growing up, I feel like it's a difference now for me because when I was growing up, there was this overt like American exceptionalism. We had the absolute right to be in the Middle East and to do what we did because of 9/11. All right. But like now it doesn't feel like that as much. Like even like if we're talking about like the war in Gaza, like even that from like day one, there was already pushback about like the violence that was taking place and about like all of that stuff. Like there was a direct opposition to like what the mainstream media were pushing
Yeah.
because we had social media. So in that way, it kind of feels different because you are getting a different viewpoint from like what is going on. And you don't have like all of the news stations to solely rely on. You have a whole bunch of different other opinions. So I thought that that was it's interesting because it kind of does feel like life is kind of on a loop where like nothing really changes and the same things keep happening and we're not learning from our mistakes and we're just making the same choices. But like, I don't know, maybe because it's like in people's faces now in a way that maybe it wasn't before. I think, I don't know, hopefully that makes like good change, or at
Mm-hmm.
least put pressure on people to make better decisions.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can only hope.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So on that note, we are signing off. So we hope that you are all doing well, taking care of yourselves. Make sure to check out all of our social media, support us if you can, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.
Au revoir.